Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Wynonna Earp. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, obviously we're picking up after the events of where the mid-season finale had left off. Obviously, Wynonna and Doc are still kind of in a bad place. Obviously, Doc is with Randy, Waverly, and Nicole as they're, celebrating their engagement. And obviously, everyone's excited for them, but obviously, Doc doesn't want to stick around if it means, because eventually he knows Wynonna's going to pop up. But it's just like, obviously for her, it's like, for Waverly, it's like, obviously she wants both of them there. It's like her sister, and obviously Doc is important to her. So it's like, I want you all there, but Sally just, because the thing is, it's an understandable situation, especially the way Wynonna gets into it later on. I think it's kind of interesting where she says she's tired of feeling guilty for being what she is, and that's necessary, doing what was kind of necessary. It's like, but was what she did necessary? Because Doc found another way. It's like, we just keep this cycle going. Like, maybe if Wynonna hadn't done what she did, maybe things would be over. They could have found another way forward, like he was trying to forge with the Clantons, but, what ifs, it's too late for what ifs. There's no changing it now. But obviously what she did, it also weighs on Wynonna, but also I think it makes you wonder. Well, it's a combination of her own guilt about what she did, plus the whole situation of how Doc is treating her. So, like, obviously she's out in the woods, she's a little drunk, and she runs into Eamon, and it's like, oh, just to let you know, I can kill you anytime I want to. Like, because obviously she went so long, and Purgatory was so overrun because she didn't have the power to, like, set things right, but it's like, now I do. Which, I think you could almost look at that as a little bit of an element of, like, oh, you're kind of maybe that's the metaphor they're going for. I feel like you could almost make the argument that's her both literally and figuratively kind of drunk off her own power to a certain extent. But like I said, it's more so like her internalizing a lot of stuff. Wynonna internalizes a lot without telling anybody or really confiding in people like what's really going on. She never she has a hard time opening up. So like I don't think she'll be sarcastic and be quick-witted about certain things, but it's like she'll never always tell you what's really on her mind or what's really in her heart, So she didn't really confide in anyone what she was really feeling. So like when the time came, it's like, oh, you were off. We called you hours ago. It's like, oh, I was, busy planning plans. And it turns, she takes Waverly and Nicole to a male strip club. She's like, I didn't know it'd be but it's like, oh, I thought you had all these plans and stuff like that. It's like, rather than just admitting the truth, I'm like, yeah, I was kind of getting drunk and walking around the woods, but, But also, I like that whole situation of Waverly almost having... I don't know whether it's necessarily jealousy, but she's almost like, oh, I'm glad I'm taking Nicole off the market, just because that other bride being like, oh, and then Waverly's like, yeah, she's my fiance, and it's like, ooh, look at... So... it is that thing they say, like, oh, like, once you kind of... There's that thing about, like, apparently, like, once you're off the market, people start then paying a little bit more attention to you. Regardless, they end up running into Dimitri at the strip club, and obviously he makes a bet with Waverly because for him, he's just kind of all done with love and stuff like that. Side note, I should also bring this up at the beginning, too. Like, man, was this like a horny episode. I think I talked about it in the first half of this season. I'm like, man, this show, I may not have used those exact words, but man, this show got super horny. Like, it was always there. Like, don't get it twisted. Like, there's always been, especially with Wynonna, the innuendos have been up the wazoo, but like, it's just, I feel like this season they kicked up the sex. It's like, man, this is a horny show. And I don't mean that in a terrible way or anything. It's just like, man, it's just like, holy shit. It's just like oozing like love and horniness. It's especially this episode, especially when she was up there, like, obviously she's complaining, like, Wynonna's complaining about Doc, but she's talking about, oh, like, what he can do with his fast hands when they go down your pants. It's like, Jesus, Wynonna. But nevertheless, it turns out Dimitri, we end up finding out later on, is a Cupid, which I love that line from him saying, like, oh yeah, like, always having to explain, like, why you don't look like a fat baby. Which I think that depiction of Cupids have kind of disappeared over the years. Like, I don't think that's as prevalent as it might have been in the past. I feel like there was a more recent example of, like, a Cupid popping up in the show. I mean, I just don't remember what it was. maybe was it Happy? I swear there was something Cupid related, and was it the TV show Happy? I don't remember. I know that might have actually had a fat baby. I don't remember. Because the one that comes to my mind is like Charmed, the original show, because that's Phoebe ends up with a Cupid at the end of the series. But regardless, it's a tangent and all that. I just remember, like, I remember there being something Cupid related, and I just can't remember. I feel like it was super recent, but regardless, he ends up kind of sneaking something into Waverly's pocket, and it ends up kind of basically being love dust. And obviously she's slowly spreading it to different people. Like, obviously I was actually surprised they ended up running into Bunny, because we haven't seen Bunny since season 2, right? Was she even, I don't think she was in season 3. Maybe she was. If she was maybe in like one episode, but we haven't, I don't think we've seen her since like season 2, I want to say. I could be, like I said, I could be mistaken. It might have been season 3. But, obviously her and Nicole are trying to get a marriage certificate, but obviously, like, Nicole gets hit with the love dust super all over Waverly, but also, like, even, and I love how they depict it, because it's just, like, the light shining, kind of the wind blowing, and then Waverly kind of doing, like, that sexy face. I was like, dude, that's so cool. And, like, Nicole was like, oh my god, have you always been this beautiful? It's just like, and then to have the same thing happen to Bunny, which I think that speaks volumes, considering, like, obviously her homophobia. So she's like, she's like, do you want me to close the door? She's like, oh, whatever you want. And it's like later on showing up, it's like, oh, I have all these roses for you. She's, what was it? She referenced some movie that she was like, oh, do you want to go watch this with me or something? I forgot what movie it was. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because you're so used to seeing her be so hateful, so to see her kind of in a loving position and mood is kind of like, oh, it's kind of jarring. But obviously, like, because the whole bet between Dimitri is about, like, oh, love existing. He's very pessimistic about love. Waverly's all about it, because obviously it's like she's madly in love with Nicole, and the thing is, she ends up talking about it like she wanted everyone to feel like that. So she's like, yeah, with everything going on, Nicole might not feel as comfortable, you know, having our wedding, but it's like, if I can get a truce sign between us, then at least one day, then maybe Nicole would be okay with having, like, you know, a big wedding, because, you know, Wynonna was like, you want a big wedding, like, you've wanted one since you were 10 years old, so let Nicole know what you want. So, but then Eamon ends up falling for her, for Waverly, and it's like, okay. But then later on, Wynonna ends up falling for him, but he has no interest in her, and it's just that turns into a complicated thing of like, oh, like the competing love spell situation going on there. Which is also interesting too, because Doc ended up talking to Waverly, and she's like, I don't remember. She's like, I just touched her. I guess she truly did black out, because I wonder, was that her trying to, like, I mean, I guess it was so traumatic, and maybe it was just such a subconscious thing, she didn't think about it. So she's like, do you think I could have killed her? It's like, you are powerful. So she probably legitimately doesn't remember. Maybe because of everything, she ended up blocking it. She legitimately did end up blocking it out. But Doc going to check on Cleo, I thought that situation was going to go wilder than it did. I thought that was really interesting when it turns out, oh no, it didn't get too crazy. Like, he was just there for Cleo. Because, and I like what Dimitri had said, that basically, obviously, there's different forms of love, like sex, because, you know, Waverly was like, oh, like, you know, this whole spell ends up ignoring consent, but it's like, no, the sex only comes into play if that's what the person really wants. So, like, obviously love takes on many different forms, sex obviously just being one form of many layers of what love is, you know? So it's like, so that's why you see in certain regards, not everyone, like obviously obviously you see it with Nicole and Waverly. Obviously it's like Nicole loves Waverly in every lane, including, like, you know, loves having sex with her. So it's like, obviously that aspect of it is going to become heightened, especially because under the spell you become obsessed. It didn't get as bad as I thought it could. I thought it would have been like, I mean, obviously it's like comically like fighting over it, but it never turned really physical and bad like it could have, you know? So, which I also love that Nicole was like trying to come up with nicknames for them, even in one of them being Heatwave, and she's like, way hot. She's like, no, that's ridiculous. Which I was like, isn't that like the official, like, ship name for them? Which I'm like, anyone that refers to him as way hot was probably like, yes, we feel seen. That's what I feel like. I was like, dude, because I don't think they've ever, like, within, I think that's the first time in the story they've ever referred to them as, like, a ship name. And in particular, I think that must be, like, the go-to, like, because I feel like I have come across Way Hot before. I think even sci-fi's refer to him as Way Hot, because I think that's probably just generally what the fan bases refer to him as. So it's probably a thing of like probably throwing it in the show, even though she was like, "Oh, that's ridiculous." I think it's still a wink and a nod to the fans. So it's like, "Hey, Way Hot is officially canon," which maybe it's come up before. I don't know if that's come up in the show before, them having their ship name. Like, let me know, remind me if that is the case. I don't think it's come up before, but still. I thought that I was like, oh, that's such a cute moment, I think. But like I said, the one that surprised me the most was obviously when Doc ends up running into Cleo, but it didn't turn into a whole like, oh, like he's obsessed with her, but he's there helping her. And him saying all that stuff that he's saying to her, and she's like, well, fuck me, that's hot. Which I'm like, Doc's a dude. He's a smooth. I had a word and it just let it slip my mind. I was going to say smooth criminal, I guess. What's technically the term, I guess, I was going to go for. But him actually being there for Cleo, because obviously for her, it's like, I mean, hell, because that was also the thing, like, she's the last of the Clantons, and so it's like, you know, what happens to her? Because he wanted to figure out, like, he wanted to make sure she wasn't going to come after him, but it's like, she's like, are you going to kill me? Go ahead, because I have nothing left. He's like, I'm not going to kill you because I promised your brother I wouldn't. And he's actually there for her. It's like, she's like, my mom had this legacy plan. It's like, your mom's going, like, you don't have to live her legacy. Go live your own life. Make your own legacy. Do what you want to do. And even Cleo being like, why are you doing it? Like, why are you helping me? And for him, he's like, it's what I do. I'm a damn good sidekick. And I feel like there's layers to that line, and there's a lot of weight to it, because I think for him, it's like, obviously this season, and I talked about it, I think I brought it up during the first half of the season, was like how it's interesting how they kind of gone and brought up, like, obviously Wyatt wasn't squeaky clean. There was a lot of people that got caught up in the crossfire of some of the stuff he did. He wasn't always like the heroic person that legend might make him out to be. And obviously, like, Doc has had to carry some of that weight. You know, being like, it's like Wyatt was his best friend and he didn't agree with everything Wyatt did. And so it is a thing of like, I think I am a damn good best friend, you know. I'm a damn good sidekick because I kind of like go with the flow of what everyone does. Like, I just kind of shoulder it and just kind of, I think for him, I think with history kind of repeating with what Wynonna did, it's like the whole Wyatt thing all over again. And for him, it's like, I don't want things to be that way. I don't want to be a part of it. Like, I think that's what I feel like. I think, you know, maybe the argument could also be made that it could signify him being like, I'm always there. I don't know. I feel like there's another way I was kind of seeing that maybe it could be interpreted as like, I'm always kind of on the sidelines, just watching stuff unfold, never really being able to impact anything because I'm just the sidekick along for the ride. Like, that's, like I said, I could easily be reading too much into that, but I feel like that's a line that's meant to be read into like that. But yeah, obviously he shows up to help help Waverly, but at the same time Cleo lets him know, like, oh yeah, ma'am was offering Waverly, offering Nicole Waverly in exchange for you to hand you over to ma'am, and which even he's like, oh, understandable, like, so this is a person you love and you're willing to sacrifice anything for. I get it. But what was also really interesting though, even like eventually when everyone's under the love spell, which I love the scene at Shorty's, just like it just, first of all, just everything happening, like everyone fawning over Nicole, Eamon and Bunny. She's like, oh my god, like I got 2 phones with the exact phone number, but so I wouldn't miss your call. I was like, Jesus, that's extreme. But them all fighting, and even like Wynonna being like, oh, who needs service? And she's like, me. And it was just so damn good. Because also I think there is a little bit of an element of, I think, like, even though they didn't really go into it, there is a bit of Wynonna, I think, that does feel a bit jealous that, I mean, obviously I think it amplified there, but it's like, what did Wynonna say? Everyone loves Waverly. Like, she hasn't always had, well, I mean, obviously Waverly hasn't always had that either, being an Earp, but Wynonna's gotten it the worst, I think. like, I mean, just who she is and her personality and just being as wild as she is. Like, obviously, like, a lot of people, like, you know, some people love her, some people don't, some people straight up hate her. So, but generally speaking, almost everyone loves Waverly. So I think there's a smidge of probably like, oh, like, you're just kind of loved by everyone. And especially where her and Doc stand, I think that probably stings a little bit. But obviously, it's like, because of the love spell, it's stinging even more because, like, I want Eamon, but Eamon wants my sister. And even at one point being like, you're still into boobs, right? Like, she's like, why are you asking that? Like, it is interesting too that Wynonna isn't immune, being, you know, the Earp heir and everything, but it's like, I guess considering what this is all about, it's love. So love isn't something that's necessarily seen as evil, even if this is a spell. So I guess, you know, even the Earp heir. I mean, there's stuff that still affects Wynonna. It might not affect her as strongly as other people, as we've seen over the course of the show, but still. But like I said, the glitter bomb of just everyone falling in love with everyone. And it's just like, oh, even the Nicole and Wynonna thing. And it's like, oh, like, do you want to get naked? And it's like, she's squeezing Wynonna's butt. It's like, yeah, we probably shouldn't go there. Because it's like, yeah, we're going to cross a line or something. It makes you wonder. I mean, I'm sure they've been shipped together amongst like fans and stuff like that. I mean, in the past, I'm sure that got like shipped as well. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of ships you don't end up seeing, but also like Randy and Bunny. Also, Bunny getting up there playing on the guitar about Waverly was actually super cute. You even had Randy and Doc. I was like, oh, that's so cute too, dude. It's amazing. But what I thought was really interesting, despite the spell and everything, when it came to him and Nicole, he was like, I cannot. I was like, whoa. Even though things are complicated between him and Wynonna, they still got caught up in the moment because it is a thing that he loves Wynonna. They are connected by the fact is not only do they love each other, they also have a daughter together. So despite his complicated feelings for her right now, he was able, the spell just kind of tugged at the love that was already there. He's in a position where he's not in the best place with Nicole right now. So I just thought that was interesting that even under the spell, he was like, I cannot, you know, even though they're supposed to all be in love and everything, you know? But it turns out the reason why Dimitri's kind of like so pessimistic about love is because his heart was broken and by Eamon, because Eamon got bored of him. And it's like he changed the locks on me. It's like, oh, like, you know. I mean, but for Waverly, it's like that proves that love does exist because you wouldn't be feeling the way you did if you weren't in love. And once again, that's the dual side to love. Like that with love comes hurt, but hurt isn't all. And I've used this. I keep bringing this up because I always think it's such an interesting thing of when you hurt like that. Yes, it's a terrible feeling. It's a bad feeling. You don't like it, but it can be seen as a good thing because it shows that with hurt that, you know, that proves that you did love someone, because if you didn't, it wouldn't hurt as much as it does, you know? So that's always my mentality about it. So it's like, all right, fine, my spit can like turn them all back. So it's like, all right, and are shooting spitballs at them to break the spell. It's like, all right, aim for the butt because love is in the butt, which I love that. So just hitting everyone's butts. So everything ultimately gets resolved on that front. So obviously, you know, Doc kind of walks away from Wynonna. Obviously, you can see how much it hurts because she was even saying, I don't want to let go. But, you know, then obviously Nicole and Waverly, she's like, I don't know what happened, but you still love me, right? And, you know, Waverly's like, I do. And I'm like, oh, it's, you know, like I said, this is a horny episode, but it's also a loving episode, you know? It just, because even Waverly says something I thought was really dope of like, love is there. It's just on a day-to-day basis, it gets buried underneath all the hurt and pride that they don't show that love amongst each other like they should, that this group has for each other, because they do love each other. It's just, you know, in Doc's case, there is a lot of hurt and pride in his particular case. Hurt from like probably being like, yeah, Nicole, you know, betrayed me. So there's a little rockiness with the love there. But also with Wynonna, it's a combination of love and pride, because I think for him it's like, you know, a standard of like what he thinks is acceptable. Like obviously shooting Cleo's brother in the back wasn't something he was down for. It's like for him that's a little dishonorable, but also like especially when he was trying to make peace and you cross that one, you know. So like I said, it goes back to that conversation of whether what Wynonna said, I am necessary, but it's like crossing those lines. Is it necessary? Because you're making the same mistake Wyatt did. Because of what Wyatt did, it's led to all this Clanton, like this hate between the Earps and the Clantons, and now it continues because Chloe's the lone survivor that she's going to, like, we're going to get back everything we've lost. So you help perpetuate this cycle no matter what Doc did. Like, regardless, like, she's going to forge her own legacy, but she's going to do this because that's what she wants, not because that's 100% what her mom wanted, you know. But still, it does seem like we are setting up the whole Randy and Bunny thing, though it seems like Bunny kind of was like, no, like, you know, yes, there's 4 breasts between you, but at the end of the day, you guys are in love. Because even Dimitri was like, yeah, you know, he's never seen a greater example of love ever than, you know, the love between Waverly and Nicole. I thought that was sweet. But, you know, whether it was just Bunny being drunk or not, because she was like, bye, lesbians, and it's like, actually, Waverly's bisexual, or, you know, or you could just call it horny or something like that. And it's like, and there she is, there you are. But hopefully this is their way of making Bunny less homophobic. Maybe this is their way to kind of tilt it, being like, it's a process. She'll get there eventually. She's taking steps at the very least. So it ended up being a medium fussy wedding, as Waverly kind of describes it. So, but obviously at the end we have like Amon and Wynonna kind of hooking up, because once again it's a thing of like, look, once again she is tired of feeling guilty for being who she is, like being what she is, and that's necessary. So whether there ends up being anything more with her and Amon, which is so interesting, because even him being like, you're so confusing, because one minute you want to kill me and then the next, I think it's just she's hurting right now, and when she hurts she just kind of wants to just kind of bury a lot of that. Once again, kind of like Waverly says, they kind of bury it with hurt and pride, you know. So day by day that love gets buried. So I think that's just more of that. Now whether anything comes about that, we'll see. Another angle to this is, obviously they told Rachel to stay out of the basement, but she goes and she ends up releasing Billy, which he ends up finding his way back to Cleo, because Cleo's dead set on revenge, and sadly Billy's going to be a means to ending the Earps, because she ends up slicing and dicing her mom. It's like, because it's like, oh, like, you wanted, if anything happened to you, you want to be brought back as a Reaper so you can basically help the family kill the Earps, but it's like, no, like, you're not going to be around to see it. So she ends up feeding her mom, well, cutting her up into pieces with the chainsaw, and then feeding her pieces to the Reapers. Once again, the element of that cycle repeating, like whether there'll be, like, this could only end badly. I don't think there's going to be any clearing, like Cleo's path is set, and it's just like continuing this feud between the families. It's going to be interesting to see where things kind of end up, you know, where both sides currently stand, where everyone on the Earp side, like I said, where Wynonna and Doc currently stand, and now Doc knowing about Nicole, like where things kind of land on that front as well. So it's going to be interesting to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. I'm glad to have Wynonna Earp back. Like I've said, it's sad to know that these are the final episodes. Like I said, maybe there'll be potential for this to end up on another network and they could get another shot, but for right now it seems like these are definitely the final episodes in Sci-Fi. So it's bittersweet, but at the very least I'm excited to see ultimately how they plan on wrapping up this chapter of Wynonna Earp, well, just wrapping up Wynonna Earp as a whole. So it's going to be interesting to see where all this ultimately ends up taking us, especially because I'm going into this having not seen anything. I've avoided the promotional material. I avoided watching the trailer just because I didn't want to know. So I'm excited to see what happens. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.